Hello, gang, and welcome to another Heroes Hangout. I'm Sarah Hill of the Veterans United Network. Heroes Hangouts celebrate organizations, military, and civilians who continue to serve those who served. In our studio today, we have a NASA astronaut. You may remember this astronaut. He hails from Missouri, and we're going to be talking to him. His name is Colonel Mike Hopkins. Welcome, Colonel Hopkins. How are you doing?
Hey, Sarah, thanks. I'm doing great, and it's great to be with you today.
It's great to have you here in our Heroes Hangout. You are from Lebanon, Missouri, so we welcome you with our Missouri roots. And in 2009, you were selected with 13 others as part of the 20th NASA astronaut class. And during that expedition that started in 2013, last year, your crew orbited the Earth 2,656 times. So let me say that again, 2,256 times. Welcome home, and thank you so much for your service, Colonel Hopkins.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be home. I guess I've been on Earth now for about 7 weeks. It truly has been an incredible adventure since when I first got selected by NASA back in 2009, all the way through the training. And that 166 days, those more than 2,000 orbits that we spent up in space, just unbelievable, and certainly a lot of memories came from that.
Great. Well, we also have some students from Rockbridge Elementary who will be coming to join us here. Hi, buddy. What's your name?
Jack Skelton.
Jack Skelton. I'm so glad are you having a good day?
Yeah.
I have an astronaut and a hangout. Look, Mike Hopkins is right there. Hi, how are you? So others will be trickling in as we start our conversation here, but I wanted to welcome our Rockbridge Elementary students who hail from Columbia, Missouri. What age are you?
I'm 9.
You're 9. So what grade are you in?
3rd.
You're 3rd grade. Do you remember, did you have the opportunity to chat with him earlier when he was on the International Space Station?
No.
So you have the opportunity now. So that is pretty awesome. That was about a month ago that you all had the chance to chat with those ham radio operators live from the International Space Station. But before we let some of the students jump in, Colonel Hopkins, we just want to ask you, I know they're eager to talk to you, but how did you get involved at the very first with the military?
Yeah, so actually it went all the way back to high school. I was interested in the military. My father, as well as my uncle, were both pilots in the military, one in the Marines, one in the Air Force. And so it was in the family. It was something that I was certainly interested in, certainly in the flying piece of it as well. And then I was also interested in engineering. And so there was a nice fit there for the Air Force. And so I was very fortunate to get into the Air Force ROTC scholarship program at the University of Illinois, and from there commissioned, and just had a fantastic career in the Air Force since then.
So why an astronaut? How did you make the decision that you wanted to become an astronaut?
Well, my interest really started back in high school as well. That was the early days of the shuttle program, and back then schools used to shut down so that you could actually watch the shuttle launches live, and I remember just seeing that and thinking, wow, that is just unbelievable, watching the astronauts launch into space and then do all their work up into space, whether it was launching satellites or go out on EVAs. And it really just inspired me, and it was something that I was interested in, and so I always kind of kept that in the back of my mind as a dream that I'd like to try and do someday if everything worked out.
And how strenuous is that training involved with becoming an astronaut? What are some of the things that you have to do?
Yeah, well, once you're selected as an astronaut, the training is quite intensive. You have to do everything, and when I say that, you have to stay physically fit. We have to learn about the systems on board the International Space Station. We have to learn how to go out on the spacewalks when we wear those big suits. We have to learn how to operate the robotic arms. We have to learn another language because right now we launch all of our astronauts on a Russian rocket, so we need to be able to speak Russian. And so the training is quite extensive and covers a lot of areas, but at the same time, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun indeed. So tell folks your name again.
Jack Skelton.
So Jack, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask the astronaut?
How many spacewalks have you been on?
Yeah, Jack, it's a great question. I was very lucky when I launched into space. We didn't have any spacewalks planned, and then unfortunately something broke outside of the space station, and I had the opportunity to go out on 2 spacewalks, and they happened to be in December. The first one was on the 21st of December, and guess what? The second one was on Christmas Eve. And so it was quite a treat, quite a Christmas present to be able to go outside, help fix the space station, and then get to enjoy a little time off on Christmas.
Yeah, that'd be an incredible Christmas Eve, wouldn't it? Can you imagine? Got any other questions you want to ask?
Have you ever been on, have you ever had any troubles with your spacesuit?
You know, that's a great question, Jack, because we actually earlier there was a spacewalk. I think it was in July of 2013, and the astronauts did have a problem with their spacesuit. In fact, one of them, they had water that started filling up the helmet, and so that became very dangerous for him because you know, if he had started to breathe in all of that water, it could have turned out pretty bad for him. And so there was a lot of work that went on between when they went out the door back in July and then when we went out the door in December to try and make sure we understood what happened with our spacesuits and then how could we prevent that from happening again when we went out the door. So we were the first ones to go out the door since that incident, and fortunately the team on the ground had a great plan. We were able to fix the suits, and we were able to go out and have a safe spacewalk.
Glad that had a happy ending. What about advice out there, Colonel Michael Hopkins, about individuals, perhaps Jack here, who might want to go into space someday? What advice would you give those watching who aspire to go into space?
I think you know, for kids Jack age, you know, you got to study hard. You have to, but also play hard. You have to have a nice balance there. Work hard, and the science, the math, the engineering type things are very important. Most of us come from those types of fields. But then as you get into high school and you start to go on to college, study something that you're passionate about, because that's the most important thing, really, is to do something you love. And because sometimes getting to become an astronaut is out of your control. You know, sometimes there may be issues that prevent you from doing that. So it's very important to be doing something that you really enjoy, that you really love, because no matter what happens, then you're going to be happy with what you're doing.
So when you were this guy's age, what were some of the things that you were interested in?
I was interested in sports, a lot of sports. So I was playing football, basketball, and so I certainly enjoyed the outdoors activities. I was also, I guess, a Cub Scout at that point, or Weeble, I'm not sure which at that age. So was doing a lot of the camping and outdoor activities. And you know, school was fun. You got to go and learn and everything, but certainly enjoyed a lot of the physical activities and things like that.
Any other questions you got?
No.
No, you answered all of them. Hey, that's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about the military, Colonel Hopkins. You have found a passion in supporting our troops. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the reasons that you are so passionate and why now more than ever we should be rallying around our troops?
Well, I think it all goes back to just my time in the military. First of all, I've had the wonderful opportunity to work with some incredible people in the military. And really selfless people that are willing to sacrifice everything for their country and for all of us. And so I think that's important for us to remember as we enjoy, as I sit here and have the opportunity to be an astronaut, have the opportunity to go up into space. Really, that's because of all of our veterans out there that have sacrificed so much in service for this country. And so I think that's probably the biggest reason why I think it's important we all try to remember that and support the veterans.
Indeed. What kind of work, for the people who aren't familiar with when you were on the International Space Station, what kind of work was involved with that particular mission that you just returned from?
Yeah, there's a ton of work while you're up there. The work involves everything from maintaining the space station. So there's a lot of maintenance. So just like your houses, and it's great to see all these other kids coming in.
Yeah, in a crowd, right?
Yeah. But just like your house, things break, and so you have to fix those. And so we did that a lot on the inside, just standard maintenance as well. And then the most important thing that we were doing up there was the science. And there's a lot of science that's happening right now as we speak. There's currently 6 astronauts and cosmonauts on board the space station, and their primary job is executing science. And that science has a wide range. There's an instrument up there called the alpha magnetic spectrometer, and this sits on the outside of the space station looking for the origins of the universe, looking for black matter, dark matter. And so that's pretty exciting that's happening. And then at the same time, the science involves us, the astronauts. We're guinea pigs up there, and so there's a lot of experiments on us, like what happens with our spines in space, because now you're no longer in gravity, and so you actually get to grow a little bit. And so that's kind of exciting for someone my age, because most of us have stopped growing by the time we hit my age.
Absolutely. And so now we have all of these kids from Rockbridge Elementary. On the count of 3, let's say, hi, Colonel Hopkins. Hi, Colonel Hopkins. They have some awesome questions for you, and I know we asked some of them, but who has a question for Colonel Hopkins? Raise your hand. Yeah, go ahead. And speak real loudly and clearly.
Well, how big is the gravity of the sun, and how does it affect the Earth's rotation?
How big is the gravity of the sun, and how does it affect the Earth's rotation? That's an awesome question. What's your name?
Jacob.
Jacob.
Okay, Jacob. Well, you stumped an astronaut. I don't know exact numbers for what the gravity from the sun is, but it's obviously it's pretty big, and it's what keeps us in orbit around the sun, and so that affects everyday life here on planet Earth, and that's why we. As we see the tilt of the Earth, and that's what we get with the seasons as we continue to orbit around. That's why we get to see wonderful springs like this, and then we get the nice winters when we get to play in the snow, and so all of that is due to the sun, and so obviously it's a very important part of life here on Earth.
Great question. Great question, Jacob. Who else has a question? Yes, what's your name?
Jonathan.
This question comes from Jonathan. Go ahead, Jonathan.
What does a hurricane look like from space?
Jonathan, that's a great question. Yeah. So what you see in space is you see the clouds. The clouds are absolutely fantastic from when you're looking at them from 260 miles up. But the hurricanes themselves, you see this big, so you may have seen pictures of them, but it's this big spiraling clouds, and they're truly stunning, and they can cover just an amazing amount of territory. And one of the things, though, Jonathan, that we have to keep in mind when we're seeing it from where we are, it looks stunning, it's beautiful, and all that. But then you have to realize that people are in danger down below the clouds, and that there's actually a lot of damage that could be going on as well. So, though they're awful, it's awful neat to look at them from up there, but it's also very dangerous for people.
Great question. A reminder, you are watching a live conversation with Colonel Michael Hopkins. He's originally from Lebanon, Missouri, just returned from the International Space Station, and we are surrounded by some awesome kiddos from Rockbridge Elementary. What's the name of your classroom where you're from?
Miss Archer.
Miss Archer. And you're from Miss Crooms. All right, and your grades again? Fifth graders from Rockbridge Elementary. Who else has a question for Colonel Hopkins? Go ahead, raise your hand. Go ahead.
What do the cities look like from nighttime?
What do the cities look like from nighttime? And what's your name?
Sam.
That question comes from Sam.
Hi, Sam. Yeah, it's amazing the number of lights that you can see from the space like that. The cities, they just glow. It's all these little twinkles, like a bunch of little fireflies that all got together. And as you go across the United States, you can truly just see an amazing amount of cities. But what's also neat about it is you can go around to other parts of the world. For example, when we travel over the deserts, like the Sahara Desert, for example, there's not a lot of cities out there, and then you'll just see black. There's nothing down there at night that you can see with the naked eye. So the cities really stand out. They're absolutely beautiful. Though it's kind of hard sometimes to take good pictures of the cities at night, but it is pretty neat to see them.
It's a great question, Sam. Who else has a question for Colonel Hopkins? Yeah, Jacob.
Okay, so can you see other planets from outer space, and if so, what do they look like?
Yeah, you can see the planets like Venus. We used to see every morning or every sunrise, I guess, which we had 16 times a day. You could see Venus coming up. And really it looks very similar to what you see down on Earth. So it's you can't really see any details or anything. It almost looks kind of like a bright star that is just moving a little bit quicker than some of the other ones.
Great. Who else has a question? Yeah.
How many hurricanes do you see in a year?
Wow. So we see not only the hurricanes that'll affect the Western Hemisphere, for example, the United States, but we also see like typhoons that'll be out in the Pacific and the Indian Oceans as well. So I'm guessing while I was up on the space station, which was only for 6 months, I probably saw maybe 3 or 4 different hurricanes or typhoons. So that means maybe in a year you may see 6 or 7, I guess.
Good question. Just raise your hand, guys. Yeah, go ahead.
How fast is the Earth's rotation?
How fast is the Earth's rotation? That's a great question.
Yeah, so the Earth rotates on a 24-hour clock, but when we're up on the space station, we're traveling at 17,500 miles an hour. So we're actually going around the Earth 16 times a day. So as that Earth rotates once, we've gone around it 16 times, and we get to see 16 sunrises and sunsets.
Yeah.
Do you get close enough to Jupiter to see the rock and ice of the rings?
No, we don't get. Yeah, that's so. Actually, it's really amazing when you think about how close we really are in low Earth orbit to the Earth. So Jupiter is way out there, and really, I'm not sure if I saw. I don't think we saw Jupiter the whole time when I was up there. So no, we don't get close enough. Even the Moon is still a long way away compared to where we are relative to the Earth.
Great question. Yeah, Jacob?
Since you're on the space station, not the moon, what does the moon look like?
The Moon, it actually looks very similar to what you'll see here on Earth. Again, you get the advantage of not seeing it through the clouds, and the other interesting thing is it happens very quick. So it's moving very fast for us, or the Moon's not necessarily moving, but we're moving fast, and so it passes through our field of view pretty quick. So whereas you might get to see it for a good portion of the night, we'll just see it for only a few minutes every orbit.
Yeah, Sam?
How do you guys decide when you sleep?
That's a great question. So we actually are on Zulu time, or GMT time, which is about 6 hours ahead of the time that you guys are right now. So I guess if it's it's almost 3:30 here, so 9:30. 9:30 on station? Yeah, 9:30 on station right now. So the astronauts on station right now are getting ready to go to bed. And really, though, because we're going around the Earth so many times a day, the way we control when it's time to go to bed is you just flip off the lights in the station, and it's dark, so now you go to bed, and in the morning we'll wake up about 6 or 7 o'clock and flip on the lights, and that's daytime.
Great question. Yeah, Jacob?
What does space food taste like?
Space food. Well, I've actually got some down here, so believe it or not, this is some of the space food that we have. This is a dehydrated space food, and it doesn't look very good right now, I'm sure, if you guys can see that here. I'll get a little closer to the camera here. Oh, that's too dark. But anyway, so that's some of the dehydrated food. We have to add water to this through this little port right here, and then we let it sit for about 10 or 15 minutes, and this is probably, what is this? Cauliflower with cheese. So if you like your vegetables, this is what cauliflower and cheese looks like in space. But actually, when you open up the package and you eat it, it's pretty good. So we do have a pretty good diet up there. We have actually quite a big diet, a lot of variety in the foods, both meats, vegetables, breads, fruits. So we have all the things you have down on Earth, just packaged a little bit differently.
Yeah.
What's your favorite food in space?
So that's a great question. I had a lot of favorite foods. Some of them were the fruits. I enjoyed the fruits, and those would be like sometimes like your fruit cocktail. We had some dried fruits, and then I also beef enchiladas. Oh, the beef enchiladas were great. You take a tortilla, you put the beef enchiladas in there, and really tasty.
Beef enchiladas. Who knew? Yeah.
What does rain look like in space?
Yeah, so that's another great question. So we really couldn't see rain from space because there'd be clouds in our ways. But what you could see, which was really neat, is at night, if you were going over, say, the United States, and it was really cloudy, and there's a lightning storm, what you do see are these flashes of the lights from above. So we don't get to see all the rain and everything, but we can tell when there's thunderstorms going on because there's quite a light show of the Earth.
Yeah.
What kind of food do you eat in space?
Well, so I showed you some of the dehydrated food. I'll also show you like this. We have what we call irradiated food, and so this is food that's already kind of prepared in this package, and all we need to do is heat it up. And so we'll stick it in a little oven that we have. This is actually beef fajitas, and so a lot of times our meat or chicken will come in a package like this. And so there's that. And then, some of the stuff that we eat up there is just like the food you'll have at home. So we'll have granola bars up there that are bought out of the store. I don't know what the local store there is in Missouri, but here it's you've got Kroger's and we've got H-E-B, so they just go down to the store and buy some things like that, like granola bars.
Jacob.
So, are your microwaves and ovens and stuff like that powered by the sun?
Well, so we get our power from the sun. In fact, I tell you what, I'm going to show you guys, I'm going to wheel in a little model of the space station here. Hopefully I'll get it so that you guys can see it. May have to zoom out a little bit. All right, so we get our power from the sun, and we use these solar arrays that you can see right here. So there's actually, well, we've got 8 of these large solar arrays around the station, and they collect the sun's energy and they convert it into electricity. And then that goes through batteries here. It gets stored in batteries, and then it comes inside the station. So all these modules that you see inside here, this is where we're living. And so what we do is they bring in the electricity, and then that's how we power. We don't have a microwave, but we do have kind of like a little oven. It's almost like a little briefcase, but it does work on electricity, and so that's where we get the power for that.
And where are you situated on the station? Where do you live?
Yeah, so we actually live in this, really all of this part right here that you can see, it's kind of the long part, these modules, all these individual modules. So this is a module that was built by Europe, and so it's actually a laboratory. Here's one built by Japan that's a laboratory. And this first module right here, that's called Node 2, and that's actually where our sleeping quarters are. And our sleeping quarters, oh, I guess I probably was standing up too high so you couldn't see me, I'm sorry. But our sleeping quarters are in this little module right here, and really it's about the size of your broom closet, so it's not real big, but it doesn't have to be because we're floating, and so there's no real up or down, and so we can take advantage of that whole space, and it's actually quite comfortable. It's very nice to sleep in space.
Yeah, Sam.
How do you go to the bathroom in space, like in the space station?
Yeah, Sam, that's a great question as well. So actually, let's see, the module is a little bit further back here. This is the laboratory. You go through the laboratory to know what we call Node 3, and that's where the bathroom is on the station. And it actually, we have 2 parts for when we go to the bathroom. So when we have to urinate, we actually use a funnel. There's a funnel there that has a hose connected to it, and so we turn on a fan that creates some suction, and we urinate into that hose. And guess what we do with that? Does anybody know what we do with that urine?
What do you
Yeah,
think?
Turn it into water?
that's exactly right. We take that urine, we recycle it, and it becomes our drinking water. So when I showed you that food that had to be rehydrated, well, at one time that water that was used for that probably came from the toilet. And then the other part that we use, so the second part is when we have to really go to the bathroom, and then that one's it's a different container. It's just like a metal container, and so we go in there. We put it goes into like a little plastic bag. We stuff it down in there, and then when it gets full, we have to change it out for another one, and we change it out about once a week.
Yeah.
Is your gear like hard to carry around?
Is your gear hard to carry around?
Yeah, so that's a great question too. I'm going to move this out of the way here real quick. So the gear on station, one of the things that I like to say about space, like living in microgravity, is sometimes the impossible become possible, but the simple sometimes become difficult. And the gear on station is a great example of that. So right now I've got this pen, and we used them on station all the time. We'd write notes as we were working on things. But the problem is, in space, well, here on Earth, if I let go of this pen, it just falls, and I know exactly where it is. It's right here below me. But in space, if I was to let go of this, it's just going to sit here, but then it's probably going to be picked up by an air current or something, and it's just going to start floating away. And then the next thing I know, I want my pen, and I have no idea where it is. It could be up here, it could be down there. It's so easy to lose tools in space, in the space station itself, because again, if you let go of them and don't have them secured somewhere, they will float off and disappear on you, and you may find them a couple months later at one of the air vents.
Great. Okay, 2 more questions. Yeah.
Is it fun to float around it with gravity?
It's absolutely amazing to float around. It's one of the my favorite parts about being in space is floating. It never got old. I was up there for 166 days, and I loved every minute that I was up there floating. And so it truly is an incredible experience. You get a little bit when you swim and all that, and you're floating, but you just are much more mobile floating around the station. It takes nothing to move. You can just very lightly push off, and unless you run into a wall or a hatch, you can go all the way through the station. So it is truly an incredible experience. And unfortunately, like I said, I've almost been on Earth now for 2 months, and it's already getting hard to remember what it was like.
I bet. Yeah, some of you haven't asked a question. Go ahead.
One of my friends said that if you get shocked by electricity, you can turn off lights. Is that true?
Well, that is true. We're very careful about working with electrical components up on the space station. So we always want to make sure that we're grounded, so that protects us, and it protects the equipment as well. Because again, if you get a short in something, then you could actually blow circuits and everything to get powered down. So we definitely don't want that.
Okay. Yeah, anybody who hasn't asked a question? Yeah, go ahead.
How many pounds is your spacesuit?
Oh, wow. So, we actually have a couple of spacesuits. So one spacesuit we actually wear when we launch. And that spacesuit doesn't weigh quite as much, but it's really there just to help us if there is an emergency in the launch vehicle. It protects us and helps us land. Now, the other spacesuit in here, I'm going to wheel one of these in, too. Let's see if we can see this. Here we go. Oh, I better pull it back some. Okay. So this is what we call the EMU. This is what we wear when we go out on one of our spacewalks. And so it's actually kind of a neat suit. Of course, you can see our helmet up here, but this is kind of the control panel. This is where we control the temperature, our radios, the airflow. Everything is controlled right here. And so this suit and everything that we take with us, everything we need, the power, the oxygen, the cooling system is all in this little backpack. I don't know if you can see that. Here, let me rotate it around. There you go. So we got this backpack here that's carrying everything that we're going to need while we're out there. And so this suit itself actually weighs about 300 pounds here on Earth. So it's pretty heavy, and it'd be very hard to walk around on Earth. But fortunately, we're in microgravity in space, and so it doesn't really weigh anything. It has mass, and so you still have to control that mass, but it doesn't weigh anything.
How about taking a shower? How do you take a shower?
You don't.
How do you bathe?
We don't have a shower in space, but that's okay because we do have what we call some hygiene towels, and so they're towels that have some soap already kind of in them, and then we just put water on these towels and we wash off. It's kind of like a spit bath, but it works pretty well. I was actually pretty surprised at how clean I felt while I was up there.
And then when you got home, you stood in the shower for like hours, right?
So that's a great question. So that was one of the things when people would ask me on orbit, what do you miss? And I would typically say one of the things I missed was a shower, because I do like to do exactly that, stand in the water, and it feels so good. Well, when I first landed, though, there was enough. Your vestibular system is a little messed up when you first land, so you're a little wobbly and all that. So actually, when I took that first shower after landing, it was probably within maybe 8 hours or so of being on Earth. I was a little wobbly, and the water was actually kind of provocative, and so it wasn't as enjoyable as I was hoping. So it was really probably 2 days later before I finally was feeling well enough that I was able just to sit there and really enjoy the shower.
Well, that's great. We could spend hours learning. This is fascinating. I want to get 2 more questions, though. Yeah, go ahead.
Are all spacesuits white?
No, they're not all white. The ones we use are white, as you see. And one of the things we'll do, actually, when we go outside in this suit, we'll actually put different stripes on. So you can see here, this has a red stripes, and then the other guy that goes out from the U.S. side would be wearing white. And that's how they can help identify the people on the ground, which person are they actually seeing in the camera views and all of that kind of stuff. Now, our Russian cosmonauts, they actually have a different type of suit that they wear when they go out on an EVA, and that suit's kind of a tannish brown color, so it's not white.
Great question. Yes.
Yeah. What's the closest planet that you can see from Earth?
The one that I remember seeing quite often again was Venus, and so that one seemed to come up pretty regularly for us. I'm not sure if I saw, or I don't recall seeing any of the others.
Yeah. Last question.
Is the moon bigger in space than it seems?
That's a great question, and I guess I never really, before launch, had looked at the moon and thought, okay, how big is it? And then when I got into space and I was seeing the moon, it seemed the same size, but it maybe could have appeared a little bit bigger, but I think in general it looked about the same size.
That's great. Last question. I know you had your hand up for a while, so go ahead. Last question.
How do you sleep without floating off?
That's a great question, because we absolutely would float off. So what we end up doing is in that crew quarters that I described, it's about the size of that broom closet, we actually have strapped to one of the walls a sleeping bag. And so we just crawl into that sleeping bag, zip it up, and some people like to keep their arms out, but if you keep your arms out when you fall asleep, you'll actually end up just kind of floating. So you can, if you peeked in on someone, you might see them with their arms floating like this. I tended to have my arms inside the sleeping bag, so they were more wrapped up like that.
Well, that is great, guys. We can ask him some more questions after we end the broadcast here. But Colonel Michael Hopkins, thank you so much for joining us. We so appreciate your time sharing with these Rockbridge Elementary students.
Well, thank you very much. It truly is a pleasure to be here. It's a wonderful story to share, and it's just absolutely great to see young kids that are interested in space, and so I just encourage them to continue dreaming big.
Dreaming big indeed. Can we give him a hand? Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us for this Heroes Hangout. Thanks for watching, thanks for serving, and thanks for serving those who serve. I'm Sarah Hill of the Veterans United Network. Have a great day. Thanks, guys. That was great.
So that was like
Thank you, Colonel Hopkins.
So that was news?
Yeah, we were putting it out. We were putting it out on YouTube. Some of the kiddos might have some additional questions. Are you okay on time?
I'm absolutely okay. I would love to answer more questions.
Actually, are the kids okay on time, or do they need to go?
Yeah.
In the next few minutes?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. So maybe say 3 more questions. So anybody who hasn't asked a question that wants to ask a question? Yeah, over in the blue.
Camera, have them talking to you.
Yeah, go ahead in the blue.
Zach?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, go for it. What's your question?
How, I forgot my question.
It's all right. Go ahead. Yellow?
How do you use electronics in space, and if you do?
Yeah, we do. That's a good question. Actually, we have a lot of space. In fact, there are hundreds of computers up there, laptops that we use. We use those to email home. We use those to control the space station. Systems on the space station. We had iPads up there. We have cameras up there. So there's all kinds of electronics on the space station. And again, I showed you that picture, that model of the space station. All of that's coming utilizing the power that comes from the sun. We actually send up a lot of batteries. So the standard AA batteries that you guys use in some of your electronics, we're using up on station as well.
Zach, did you want to ask a question then? You sure?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Does the water taste different since? Yeah.
No, the water is pretty good. We've got quite a filter system on it. You hope there would be, because again, some of it starts out as urine, so you hope it tastes pretty good by the time you get to drink it. So actually, no, I think it probably tastes very similar to what you have on Earth. And then we actually, when we drink the water, a lot of times too, we're drinking our coffees or our teas or juices. So we have little juice bags, or almost like a Capri Sun, something like that, except it would have just a powder in it, and then we'd add water to it and drink for that. So I drank a lot of water up there, but I also drank a lot of juices and teas.
Great. Last question. You over there in the blue.
When you're in space, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, that's another great question. And really, our job is to execute the mission, and it changes a little bit between expedition to expedition, but in general, it's very similar. And that is, the primary job at the end is to do the science that's on board the space station, but then we also have to maintain the space station, and so that does take a lot of work. One of the other things we do a lot of is we have to take care of ourselves, and so we actually exercise quite a bit while we're up there. 2 hours a day minimum, we're probably either lifting weights and running on a treadmill or riding on an exercise bike, because while we're in microgravity, our muscles and our bones can get weaker, and maybe in microgravity up to space that's not a big deal, but the problem is we eventually come back down to Earth, and when you do that, if you haven't helped combat those negative effects of microgravity, that weakening of the bones and of the muscles, it can be very difficult, and so to counteract that, again, we spend a lot of time exercising.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Before we go, and Scott, maybe you could unblue box that account right there. We want to give you something. It's called a Hangout High Five, and it is our way of telling you that we so appreciate you joining us in this Google Hangout. So we are giving you a high five, Colonel Hopkins. Thank you for joining us. We so appreciate you sharing your time with us.
That's my first Hangout high five, so thank you very much. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. I couldn't see it really, but thank you.
Give us a high five. Yeah, just give us a high five in the air, and we're giving you one right back. There you go. All right. Thanks again, and thank you so much for your service. See you later. Bye. See if you can click stop there.
Bye.
Do you see the stop?